that you tell everybody what where they are.
Sorry, I'm not able to do things like normal this morning.
Understand.
Ready.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Canova Peterson, the Vice Chairman of the Cvta Finance Committee. Our Chairman, Mayor Stoney, unfortunately is not here today. He's attending to some special events down on Monument Avenue this morning, so will not be able to join us. But so we'll start the meeting though with first item on our agenda today is welcome and introductions. And today, I believe we've got a very special introduction because we do have a new member of this team that Nicole Mueller has done a great job with us since the beginning of the CVTA. However, she has moved on up to better use her talents to another position, and Miss Janice Firestone has joined us from Hanover County, and I can assure everybody here from working with her before that she is quite competent and a pleasure to work with. So please welcome Janice to the team.
Thank you.
Janice, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Certification quorum, Mr. Parsons.
Yes, sir. We do have a quorum.
Okay. Amendments to the agenda. Okay. I'm hearing none. I do have an amendment for the agenda. On item number 9, I believe it is. The Personnel Committee update. We have a situation where the folks that are going to make that presentation aren't prepared to make that presentation yet. So if Martha, would you please go over where the HR work committee is with this information, and this will be put on our next committee meeting.
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Mr. Peterson. So I spoke with the members of the HR roundtable last night, actually, and they are working toward putting together a set of deliverables for the September 21st Personnel Committee. The committee will be meeting, and then that's in advance of the full authority meeting later that week on the 24th. The group is putting together a set of deliverables that include an executive director job description, classification and compensation review, recommendations around that classification and compensation, payroll and benefits recommendations, a draft recruitment profile, and a draft recruitment timeline. So all of those materials will be provided for the personnel committee to review and discuss at their meeting on the 21st. I think that the expectation is that out of that meeting, the personnel committee will have an update to provide to the full authority and to Mr. Thornton at the 24th regular authority meeting. And the next steps from there, I think, will be subject to consideration by the full authority and the timeline that they've proposed. One thing that Ms. Lawson did mention to me in her email that she sent was just simply that she would appreciate having access to information about the CVTA operating budget. So that is an item on the agenda for today that we can discuss, and I can forward that information on to them certainly later this morning.
I think we can address that right now. Would we be comfortable sharing with the HR, the Human Resources Work Group, the financial data from CVTA? Any issues?
Yeah, so I think what I'll do is just provide the documents that are included in the packet. That's the fiscal year 2022 budget. That's the last page of your packet and shows the operating budget by line item. But I'll also note that pending final approval from the authority on the 24th, the recommendation from this committee is to carry over the unexpended balance from fiscal year 2021. And that's about $198,000. We've got an item onto this morning's agenda that will reduce that just slightly. But in general, the carryover balance would be just under $200,000. So I can provide that total of that context and information.
I believe that was in the packet. Was it?
Yes, sir.
Not? Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, with that, then I will make the motion to amend the agenda to delete item number 9. That's
Second. Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the agenda has been amended. Next item that we have is approval of the August 11th Finance Committee action meeting minutes. I'm going to defer this back to staff, because when we're looking at this minutes, either the numbering is off, or some items have been left out. It goes from 1 to 2 to 6 and in the interest of clarity for the public, I think we need to revise this, put it back in good shape, and bring it back at our next meeting to be reviewed and approved with the minutes of this meeting. So with that, I'm going to defer that item till our next meeting. Open public comment period. Mr. Parsons, do we have any digital? If anybody wants to speak?
We have not received any requests for anyone to speak today.
Mr. Peterson, we do have one person on the attendee list virtually, and so I've just chatted with them to ask if they would like to speak, and so far we haven't gotten an indication that gentleman would like to address the committee.
Okay, if we have no one wishing to speak at citizens' time, the public comment period, we will close that public comment period and move to item number 4. Item number 4 was the report that Mayor Stoney was putting together, and as a finding out that I was going to be here last night, I did not put one together. So we're going to move on to item number 5, which is Chet Parsons and Martha Peter and York going to give us CVTA activities report.
You can start? Okay. Couple of updates for you, just so that you are aware. The audit is underway. Ms. Basie and Ms. White have been more in contact than I have been with the auditing company, but I know that all of the requested information has been provided to them. I think maybe as early as recently as this morning, there might have been an update, but we'll get a chance to look at that. But wanted to let you know that so far things are moving forward with the audit, and would expect Mr. Farnsworth to come back and the team from PD Mayors to come back to this committee with the results of that effort. Also included, and Debbie Basie is here to speak to this and kind of go through it with you. We have a more substantial set of financial reports to be able to summarize the revenues and distributions for the year ending June 30th. And she's offered to walk through those with you. I thought that she did a really nice job putting together this format. We don't expect that every month there will be a, I don't know, 15-page finance report, but we thought for year end, it made sense to kind of go through and give you this nicer format with greater detail. And then Debbie, maybe you want to do that. And then afterwards I can give a couple more updates.
Good morning. I'm Debbie Basie. I work with Chesterfield County, and as you know, Chesterfield County is fiscal agent for the receiving and disbursement of the CVTA funds.
Before you go any further, could we check with the people online, make sure that they're hearing this properly? Is anybody having difficulty with that?
Volume's a little low. Maybe they could sit closer to the mic.
Yeah, please come up and join us here. That might help.
Our soft voices don't pick up on the microphone sometimes.
I try to project. I was introducing myself. I'm Debbie Basie with Chesterfield County. Chesterfield County's fiscal agent for the CVTA for the receiving and disbursement of the CVTA funds. The financial report that's in the packet, you've seen this before, but this is for the entire fiscal year 21. And you'll see that for fiscal year 21, total revenues were $137,389,458. Payments to the regional fund are $47,736,311. GRTC has received about $20.5 million, and disbursements to the local jurisdictions were $68,194,730. And then this just reflects the different bank accounts that Chesterfield County maintains for the CVTA. On the bottom, there is the GRTC fund that has been closed once the board had decided that monthly disbursements were going to be made to GRTC. So we no longer have a balance on hand for that organization. And then just any questions on this one statement?
Any questions? Carol?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, is that statement in the packet that we downloaded?
Page number 5.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Are we showing that on screen for the folks online to be able to see
I'm
it?
happy to.
Okay,
Okay, and then the following reports, and it's 10 pages. This is something that I do prepare and I do provide to individuals at at the different jurisdictions. When I do the calculation of the monthly remittance, this accompanies it. And it is by, summary for the region as well as for each individual jurisdiction. It does show the revenue that comes in, the sales and use tax, the fuels tax, and then also how much of they are funding the other organizations. But this is something that is prepared, and this is for the entire fiscal year 21. I don't know if I need to go through this in a whole lot of detail. It's just a summary information of what's on the other report. But it is something that is prepared and submitted monthly.
well, I personally thought it was very well done. I could understand it. I'm not in the accounting business, so. But, questions? Questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
A couple of other updates just on the finance front. We are working to schedule a call with the finance directors working group. Have a couple questions just about reading the kind of ebbs and flows and ups and downs of the revenue periods over time. And so we're working to set up a conversation with the representatives from the Department of Tax to kind of help us with the interpretation and analysis of that. The most recent receipt summary is a little bit lower than they have historically been, and so we want to understand that. Members of the finance working group will also be discussing some of the accounting entries around funding the fiscal year 2022 operating budget, and then also I think we want to address some questions with regard to the MOU that we have with VDOT does mention that the Department of Motor Vehicles, if I'm not mistaken, are eligible to assess a fee for their auditing services or for their audit fees. And so that has hit that month as well. And so we just want to kind of talk through all of those things to make sure that everybody understands the numbers. So that call should be happening in the next probably 10 days or so. We're waiting for everyone's availability to come in. Also on the call, we'll be discussing the status of the RFPs. As you know, the proposals for both bond counsel and for financial advisory services are due on the 17th. So whether we meet before or after that deadline, we'll be talking about kind of process and the pre-screening of the proposals before they come back to this committee for evaluation. So just a couple of other things happening at the staff level with regard to the financial activities. And I think that was everything we plan to cover. So.
We're waiting on a handful of the local jurisdiction MOUs to come back in. So we're still working to have those ready for the 24th.
Thought we had all of those completed.
We think they're complete, but they're
Just not in hand,
we may not have them in hand yet.
but we will have that before the full board meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now I think we have a TAC activities report. Well, Mr. Mayor starts, were there any questions for Martha on the financial matters? Okay, let's proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So there has not actually been a CVTA TAC meeting since the last Finance Committee meeting. So I will take this time to focus on the regional prioritization process. The Prioritization Process Subcommittee is currently incorporating comments received from subcommittee members. This revised draft document is anticipated to be distributed to the CVTA TAC members and the Finance Committee members next week. Any comments received, assuming they're minor, can be hopefully addressed via email unless there are major comments. If necessary, the Regional Prioritization Process Subcommittee can meet to address any major comments prior to the full authority meeting on the 24th. As y'all may recall from the last discussion, there's a desire to bring the prioritization process to the full authority at the meeting on the 24th. And this will be a request for adoption, assuming all comments have been addressed. Assuming that it is approved on the 24th, the CVTA TAC will consider the first round of project applications at their October 12th meeting. We've already informally requested a call for projects of interest across the region, keeping in mind that the authority previously committed to fully fund the Fall Line Trail as a first round priority. VDOT is currently working on the spending plan. They hope to have that mostly complete by the next week or two. Keep in mind that will be an iterative process, as the cost of the project is partly dependent on the schedule, and the schedule's partly dependent on the funding. So it will not, I don't think, be wrapped tightly, ready to go by the October meeting, but I think we'll have a good idea of what the outstanding balances to fund the Fall Line will be. CVTA TAC will work with CVTA staff to score and rank the candidate projects that are submitted based on the adopted process. And once scored and ranked, the TAC will make a recommendation to the Finance Committee on the project and schedules. The Finance Committee will review and make a recommendation to the full authority at that point. So we're looking at the October timeline. That's the extent of my report. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Sure.
I think it's time now for Ms. Long to speak to us on investment policy.
Right in front of the microphone. Good morning.
This has been emailed to Mr. Carroll as well.
Okay, good.
We'll post online as soon as the meeting's over.
That's good. All right, as you all know, I'm Rebecca Longacre, Treasurer, Chesapeake County, and also as indicated in the policy that you all have in front of you, the investment officer of Chesapeake County. I have been the investment officer since July 1st, 2017. When I started as a deputy, it just continued with me as a treasurer. I have staff that help me with it, accounting and everything, but the investments at the end of the day rest on my plate. I brought with me last month the investment report that we send out monthly to our board, and shows how our revenue has grown from before I started, went way up high, and then unfortunately has come down, but that's due to COVID. We're hoping a year or so we'll get through that. At any rate, I brought the policy last time for you all to review, and I understand that if there are any questions, I'm here to answer them so that you all can move forward with the policy.
Has everybody had a chance to review the policy that you brought to us last time? It's also included in your agenda packet today.
Mr. Peterson, I will note for everyone that the content and substance of the policy have not changed, but we did format it to be on the CVTA letterhead instead of the Chesterfield County letterhead, and updated the text in certain areas to be more representative of a CVTA policy, so that it reads, more consistently with the existing financial management policies and procedures. But the substance and content of the document have not changed since last month.
Any questions? And I understand this will be attached to as a part of the financial policies.
Yes, sir.
That have already been
Yes.
approved by the. So if there's no questions on the investment policy, and everybody's had a chance to read them, I believe the action we need to take today is to I'll talk to Eric on this. Do we have the right to approve this, or do we have to recommend this to the full board for approval?
I, off the top of my head, honestly, I can't recall what the charge was, but I believe since this is a policy with full authority, I think you recommend it.
I will entertain a motion regarding this.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Thornton.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so moved. We will be recommending this for approval to the full committee on 24th.
Yes, sir.
One other quick thing that Martha just handed out was a copy of the investment report. This is the format that we use for the county, and this is the July investment report for the CVTA. As you can see at this point, we're in the liquid pools only, because I don't have the ability to forecast until I know what's going on. I'll be attending tuning into the TAC meeting, so I know what's going to happen and when, so I can start investing a little bit further out. So that's just to give you all, this is the official monthly report, and I'll have Debbie include it when she sends over her information each month.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate all your work. Okay. RFPs.
Thank you.
Martha.
Yes, just as I said before, the requests were released August 16th. Proposals are due for bond counsel and the financial advisory services on September 16th, excuse me, and will be reviewed internally by staff and the finance director work group, and then will come. And so I think today what I would like to do is just have a little bit of a discussion with you all about what role as a finance committee do you want to have in the selection or the recommendation for selection of those services, and what your expectations would be around involvement in that. I think that we're fortunate to have the expertise of the finance directors working group and poised to be able to ask them to participate to a pretty healthy degree, but wanted to know what you'd like the next step after they have evaluated the proposals that come in.
Okay, let's open the floor for discussion on that. Mr. Carroll. Well, how many responses are you anticipating for each of these RFPs?
I think that the informal request for bond counsel is a little bit less certain for me. It's probable, I would say, that we might get quite a few responses, maybe closer to 10. I might guess, maybe somewhere between 5 and 10. We have not had any inquiries as of yet. I think for the financial advisory services, depending on how proposals are structured, I think it's likely that we might get 3, just because, knowing the space a little bit and the likely, the inquiries that we've received so far, as well as the likely proposals. But I think that pool of potential service providers is a little bit more limited than the bond counsel. So.
Gentlemen, what are your thoughts as to how many this committee wants to look at before making a recommendation to the full authority?
When was, I'm sorry, I must have missed it. When's the cutoff date?
September 17th.
So we're getting close. And how many for each do we get so far?
We don't have any proposals yet. At this point in time, we haven't received any formal inquiries or questions. But I would expect that we will get, typically when you get an RFP process, it's on the deadline or the day that you start to get actual communication. So
I think we need to see what we get in. So it doesn't sound like there's going to be many. And then take a review of what comes in from there.
if I may suggest, I think from a timeline perspective, we will be in a position to have a preliminary report to you at your October Finance Committee meeting. So certainly we could convene the finance directors working group and have kind of an initial evaluation of how many proposals have come in, how many appear to be qualified, that kind of information. And we can have this as a discussion item when you have more information about what it is that we're talking about. I think potentially for both, you might want to set up interviews with at least 1 to 2 of the firms as we move into the negotiation phase, just so that you make sure that from a fit perspective, both with the bond counsel and the financial advisory services, it fits with kind of ideology and intended goals going forward.
Chair,
Mr. Farr.
one of my concerns always is making sure we get the word out to as many groups as possible. So I think that should be a consideration so that more people will know about they have a chance to look for the proposal. The whole thing is about inclusion as much as we can.
I agree, but actually, Ms. Heater, to address that issue, how many different avenues have we put these RFPs at?
So we posted on the eVirginia procurement site, which is one of the most effective ways to promote requests for proposals like this. I got confirmation from 2 financial advisory services firms that they received the notification. So it was a nice kind of test to make sure that it worked. Many of the firms that are out there looking for job opportunities or work opportunities through public procurement process are subscribed. And so we're able to tag those listings that way. We also did incorporate after the finance committee particular language about the opportunity. I think Mr. Brown's words were along the lines of sort of collaborative proposals to make sure that proposals were inclusive of minority and smaller businesses, local businesses. And so we made sure that both the scoring and the solicitation language were underscored that importance for the authority and articulated that that's a kind of a priority, I would say, for the selection of vendors. We can certainly do some more, maybe more grassroots outreach as well through the business leagues and some of the professional fraternities and sororities if you'd like, and there would still be time for us to push that kind of information out.
What are your thoughts, Mr. Thorne? What are your thoughts on this?
I think we're going in the right direction.
Mr. Carroll, you have any comments on?
I think all of that makes sense. I think I agree with Mr. Thornton that we need to make sure we're getting the word out so that the community knows that anybody who might be interested has an opportunity to put in, and then we'll see what comes in, and we'll have to work with what we get.
I suggest that the finance committee rely on the expertise we have to do the initial reviews of all the receipts and rank them in conjunction. And I can do this because the mayor is not here, but he is the chairman of this committee. I do think that ought to be done in conjunction with his direction as chairman of the finance committee to do the initial reviews and then break it down to at least 2 to be interviewed by the committee as a whole. Anybody agree with that or disagree with that?
That is, of course, if we get 2.
That is. I would hope we're going to get better response than that. I'm optimistic, but I also think that the chairman of this committee ought to be directly involved in that the initial process,
We'll reach out to
and anybody else he wants to bring on board. Does that give you some direction, Ms. Hader?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, I guess the next item we have is our transit governance contract closeout.
Yes, sir. I'm going to refer everyone to page 27 of your agenda packet. This is our latest invoice from AECOM. If you recall, the Transit Service Governance Report was completed in June and submitted to the Governor General Assembly. As part of the report development process, the consultant team performed additional engagement work with member governments as well as GRTC that calls them to accrue a few extra hours. And TAC took a look at this this last invoice, as well as I had personal contact with the project manager from AECOM. They've requested an additional $10,000 and change to make up for that additional time spent developing the report. As some background for the committee's interest, you recall the authority approved a not to exceed amount of $80,000 for the budget for this work in may have been December, late 2020, early 2021. And that is actually reflected in the budget item on the following page, page 28, under contracted services. So the request that TAC heard was for an additional amount of, as I said, $10,852.46. The original contract was for $49,991, and this additional amount would total $60,843.46, which is still inside of the original not to exceed number. TAC has asked that finance take a look at this and weigh in. We would certainly want to bring this back to the authority on the 24th for final approval, but TAC has recommended granting this additional amount.
Mr. Chair.
Let's start first.
I always get concerned when I see some reports, but I've also like to know about input and how we monitor services that we have. So what do we have other than SAC groups, you know, to kind of look to make sure that we have gotten the service that we had asked for? And it's easy to look at what we're being charged, but I always like to know, have we been properly compensated?
Yes, sir. That's a great question. I think in terms of this specific report, we had the task force or work group that we set up to guide the process, to help the consultant make contacts with the different local government groups and as well as the GRTC board. I was aware as the process continued that they were giving us additional time to make sure that the product was good and met the demands of the legislation. So I was expecting that they were just going to have to eat this additional amount. But I think that when we saw the final report, it checked all the boxes and met the needs. And I think overall, everyone seemed pleased with the final outcome. So once I was able to go back and remember that the original amount that was approved was well above even what they're asking now, it made sense to consider this. I wouldn't say it's something that you would always do. Coming from the consulting side, sometimes you have to just take your lumps and make sure the project is good. But I think that considering the work that they did, it's worth considering, and I applaud the TAC for taking that into advisement.
Mr. Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is, and it sounds like he answered it, is that, did they keep us apprised of the fact that they were going to go over what they originally budgeted for? And then my next question to that is, why were we not made aware of it? Or were we, and we just are for some reason not remembering? Meaning the members. I understand that they may have spoken with you and made you aware that they were going over on their billable hours. But I think that's something that we probably should have been apprised of.
Yes, sir. And I'll take responsibility for that. I was made aware as they were moving along. The project leads were basically not recording their billable time, so that we could get the impact that we needed as part of the final report. I think that the time frame was also very tight, about 3 months. I should have made finance committee aware. I think the working group was aware as we worked through on like a biweekly check-ins, but I should have made a better effort to apprise all of the different committees of what the status was.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carroll.
I do agree with you that the report, they did an excellent job on the report, and that it did check all the boxes that we need to have checked. And that the reason I bring this up is in the future, hopefully, if we have other contracted services, perhaps we can monitor more closely so that if we have these issues, we can bring them forward. It is correct that we did essentially come in under budget on this. When we budgeted $80,000 for it, and we ended up spending what looks to be $60,000. So I think there was a value in savings on what they actually provided, what we actually estimated. So that being said, Mr. Chair, I have no problem making a motion to approve the additional funding to pay the rest of this bill.
Do I have a second?
I have a second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, but I do have some discussion I'd like to ask. What was the nature of this contract? Was this a lump sum fixed fee contract, or what were the terms of the agreement?
It was a fixed fee for that 49.9.
Okay, was this a negotiated contract, or was this a bid contract?
It was a bid.
It was bid.
Yes, sir.
My concern here a little bit is when you've got a fixed fee contract, if it was bid, was the second lower bid lower than the final for this?
If I'm not mistaken, the second bid was well over the budget amount.
The one we didn't take, yes, it was way higher.
Well,
It was a
over the
lot
budget
higher.
now,
Sure.
okay, because, you know, that, my concern there is if you've got a situation where the person who came in second ended up with a lower price than we ended up finally paying the first,
Right.
without
Right.
justification, I would be very concerned.
Yes,
So we
yes,
got
I
the-
agree.
And I'm asking also, I'm assuming that they submitted justification for the additional fees.
Yes, we do have I have an email that went into detail about what the additional costs were and who incurred them.
Okay.
We can certainly make that available to the committee.
Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I would say that email does need to be made available to not just the finance committee members, but all of the other members as well. And I will amend my motion to say that I think we may have to send this forward to the full committee for a vote. I will ask that question. If so, then my motion would be to send it forward to the full committee for a vote.
Do you agree with that, Mr. Thorne? For a second?
And I
Okay.
want to have a comment too.
Please.
Comment is that we always want any of our agents to be appropriately compensated. But it's also important for all of us, since this is a new agency that we are establishing here, that we have our standards in place. And what we want to always try to do is making sure that respect is always given to the agency itself. And we're not assuming the opposite, but that's important because we don't do that. Some people will charge whatever they want to charge. And I'm not saying that this will happen. It's always good to state publicly that what your standards are. That's the case I was just bringing up.
Thank you, Mr. Thorne. If there's no further discussion, we'll act on Mr. Carroll's motion to recommend this to the full authority. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, then the finance committee will recommend that to the full authority. Okay, we're down to well, like I said, we've already eliminated number 9. That's what I was getting. Okay, future meeting topics. We had in the package a couple of items that were there. Do we have any additional items or issues that we want to bring forward?
I'll just mention, and we can coordinate with the mayor on this as well and chairing the committee, but certainly I think the next 1 to 2 meetings may be dedicated to the solicitation process for the bond counsel and the financial advisory services. I think it might be wise also, and we can recommend to him if the committee is open to this, is perhaps having a discussion about what the objectives and the frequency of meetings and what goals you'd like to have for the finance committee. Most of your last year has been really focused on setting up those foundational policies and procedures and arrangements and those kinds of things. And so we've actually, with these MOUs, that'll be coming before the authority in September, have cleared a lot of those hurdles. And so I think it might be a good time for the committee to start thinking about what you want to set out to do going forward, how many meetings and what frequency that might entail, and those kinds of things, so that we can get a good schedule for you going forward.
Well, I agree with that, but I noticed if we go through the policies that we've already been approved, we've set a lot of dates and deadlines quarterly and different reporting that this committee is going to need to be reviewing. I know on different things, so that will heavily affect that schedule. The other thing, though, I think that is on here that needs to probably come up very shortly is the Cvta staffing, which the personnel committee is going to be reviewing, that we understand before our October meeting. So I think we're going to have to be have that included on our next agenda as well.
Yeah, I think the next 3 months at least are going to be pretty full agendas between the RFPs and the staffing conversation and the audit. So we can work to put a schedule before you of the other quarterly reports and other benchmarks, as you said, and have that information for you at the October meeting.
And our next 2 items that are already listed here, regional prioritization, project funding, Mr. Ure is going to be keeping us involved on that, I'm sure, every time we have a meeting. So that's appreciate that. All right, our next meeting is scheduled for October 13th. And if there's, do I have any comments from members of the committee? So hearing none, we are in adjournment.
See you later.
Carol, you might want to try using a skateboard. That might be easier on the hill.
I have that little wheel cart and it does work, but